Krista, grateful to have you and Classy from GoFundMe as a part of our show. Give us context for you and for the organization that you work for.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I lead our nonprofit communications team here at GoFundMe, which encompasses all the incredible things we do and all the nonprofits we work for across our Classy software platform, and all the amazing 70,000 plus nonprofits who use GoFundMe as their fundraising solution as well. And so any way that any nonprofit wants to fundraise online, they could do it through both the Classy from GoFundMe and GoFundMe platforms.
I want to begin by this incredible report that just released, The Social State of Giving. You did a pretty in-depth research project. I think it revealed, frankly, for me, things that are very intuitive and that align with my understanding of culture. But I think it also gave insight and research that I think hopefully empowers people. But share a few of the things that you discovered in that report that you think are really important for the future of modern philanthropy and fundraising in our sector.
Yeah, as you said, there were quite a few things that I think just reinforce some of our hypotheses. Younger generations are online more, they're sharing more. But a couple of things that really surprised me and that I think are really exciting for the sector are it's not just the youngest generation. It's not just Gen Z that want to share the causes they care about online. We're actually seeing this permeate through both millennials and Gen X really wanting to share and talk about causes they're passionate about through social media. And so we found that about half of Gen Z is actually sharing causes once a week on their social media platforms. And then when you go up to millennials and Gen Xers, we're actually seeing them share about once a month. So people, not just the youngest generations, are talking about the nonprofits they support online. And then I think the other big thing that came out of this for us was just how much people trust people and personal recommendations. And so, we coined this term that we're calling an impact creator. So people that are using their social media platforms for good. And one of the things that really surprised me is that the majority of young people will actually trust an impact creator to disseminate funds on their behalf. So they will give to the person, to this influencer that they follow and say, I trust you so much to know that my money is going somewhere to make an impact. You give it to the causes that you care about. You give it to the organizations that you're passionate about. And so that trust really is person to person versus person to institution.
You don't just work with millennials and Gen Z. Classy from GoFundMe serves like all of our panelists who we're about to bring on. We serve a broad group of donors. Do you feel like the trends and the things that you're surfacing in this report, the things that you just mentioned, are creating an even bigger gap and requiring even more complex and sophisticated fundraising strategies? Or do you feel like in some ways it's allowing us to perhaps simplify or be less complex in how we've understood fundraising? Because I'll say this, from the outside, it feels like things are getting more complex on a regular basis.
I wouldn't say more complex. I would say different. I truly believe that your tried and true fundraising methods still need to exist. It's not abandon ship and only pour your money into influencers. I think it's just a different way to think about things. And so one of the things that really excites me is some of the tools that we're building to actually be able to help nonprofits do this more effectively. And so when you look at the fact that people trust people, I think there's an element here where we're not asking nonprofits to do more. We're not asking you all to take your already strapped fundraising teams and asking you to create entirely new fundraising streams that, talk to younger people through social media. What we're saying is actually let go of some of that control. Give the reins to the people who are most passionate about your cause, the people that already support you, and let them bring their communities with them. And so this doesn't just have to be an influencer or a celebrity with millions of people, but who in your immediate circle of supporters have influence in their communities. And once you identify those people, how are you actually empowering them to be able to not only fundraise on your behalf, but share about your cause online? Classy and GoFundMe just launched a new meta integration that allows people to share a lot more easily with their networks. And we know from GoFundMe research that every time an organizer shares a fundraiser, they actually raise on average $100 more. So even something as like simple as asking people to share, asking these evangelists for your mission to bring their communities to you can actually help you do things a little bit differently and not necessarily asking you to do more with less resources.
Last question, Krista, before we go to our panel. A lot of times when we talk about Gen Z and millennials, there's this narrative that says, well, they really distrust institutions. They are more peer-to-peer. They're more about relationship and more about people. It seems like this report reinforces that. Maybe not the cynicism or the skepticism, but that the relationship, the trust person to person is what then gives credibility to the institution versus the institution legitimizing or giving credibility to the person. Is that true? Are you seeing that? And if so, does that feel like a significant shift in how philanthropy has been understood or done, is certainly in the peer-to-peer level?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give you a really unsatisfying answer, and I'm going to say yes and no. So on one side, the Edelman Trust Barometer measures trust across industries year after year. We're actually seeing trust in nonprofit organizations increase for the first time in quite some time. So there is that authentic, organic trust in what we are doing as nonprofits, especially when you compare it to government or media or some of these less trusted institutions. And at the same time, we're seeing that personal recommendation that you talk about, that peer-to-peer recommendation really start to rise to the top. I actually don't think that's a change. I think in the nonprofit industry, we've seen success with peer-to-peer fundraising for many, many years. Peer-to-peer fundraising is not a new tactic. I think what could be new is the fact that people really do want the authentic connection to the mission. And a lot of times that comes through that personal recommendation. It's not about a one-time transactional ask. It's about your relationship and how you actually curate that and create communities around causes. We're also seeing, as you look at older generations, a lot of them are more nonprofit specific. They have their nonprofit that they love, that they've given to for quite some time, and they will always be loyal to that. As you kind of move down the scale, we're actually seeing people be more, more interested in a cause and nonprofit agnostic. So what that means is like, how do you get your cause in front of them? And then by default, your organization and your mission. And a lot of times we're seeing that come with personal recommendations.
Thank you, Krista. Let's broaden the panel and welcome into our conversation three leaders from incredible nonprofits. So privileged not only to know them, but to have them be in this conversation. I'll let them introduce themselves, but let me start with Jared from $4, then we'll go to Mike from the Bible Project, and then Nate from OneHope. Jared, welcome to the panel. Give us a thumbnail on you and the nonprofit that you serve.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. My name is Jared Walker. I founded a nonprofit called $4. We help people with medical bills, specifically hospital bills. And what we do is we enforce something called hospital financial assistance or charity care, which is basically most hospitals in the U.S. are nonprofits. They're required to forgive or reduce medical bills if you meet certain income requirements. The problem is they don't tell you about it, and they make it pretty difficult to access. So we've made it easy and have created digital applications and just a more automated way to do it. And we've been able to eliminate about $75 million in medical debt for people throughout the country.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. Michael?
Yeah, Michael with BibleProject. We make cartoons about Jesus for the internet. That's what we do for the most part. And our aim is to help people experience the Bible as a unified story that leads to Jesus. We do that through explainer videos, podcasts, and other resources. And we get to give it all away for free, which is super fun. So grateful to get to be here. Thanks, Ted.
Yeah. Nate?
Hey, Nate Rittenhouse. I am Director of Strategy in our advancement team at OneHope. And we're about bringing God's Word to kids all over the world. God's Word, every child. In the last 30 plus years, we've had the privilege of introducing over 2 billion children to God's Word, and love working in great partnerships. We work with folks like YouVersion, where actually we helped build the first Bible app for kids back in 2013. We're working on a new one now. I just saw it today, over 100 million completions of the reading plan of Bible app for kids over the last 10 years. So it's amazing. I love it. I'll give the caveat. I've been at OneHope for about 6 months, but I've been in a number of different nonprofits and had the privilege of working in this kind of space of mobilizing and fundraising for over a decade now, and just love every minute of it.
So I'm going to ask a similar question to the panel. And Michael, I'm going to start with you because I know you've been in this fundraising game for quite a while. What are the trends or the opportunities that most excite you when you think about philanthropy in this current time? I mean, it seems like the landscape of philanthropy has shifted. What do you see changing? What opportunities most excite you? And I want to hear from the full panel. But Michael, let's start with you.
I mean, I think Krista hit on a bunch of the ones that I feel excited about, especially from the communal aspect. I mean, that's how BibleProject for us was started. It was very much a community. We are not, reliant on larger gifts of our, 50,000 patrons that support BibleProject. The majority of them are like $50 or less monthly reoccurring. And so we've seen just an incredible, which just allows the nonprofit to pivot and move and do things, and the economy can go up and down, and it really doesn't impact our budget. And so I get very excited about the crowd-funded model inside philanthropy, especially on the lower, and I want to say lower, it's not from a value standpoint. I just mean like not looking after the $1 million gift or the $2 million gift that I was used to going after in other nonprofits, where it was like, we need to get that, staple family foundation that's going to keep us afloat. And with BibleProject, we went an entirely different route. And I get very excited about that because it's been incredibly fruitful to allow us to do what we do. And it changes the way that you talk about development too. I think I'm excited about the idea of hospitality versus development. How do you care for those that are patrons of your existing ministry and allow that to grow the ministry? Ted, I owned and operated restaurants before this, but I did not... My server's job was not to go out of the restaurant and go get more customers to come in to grow the restaurant sales. The server's job was to care for the patrons that came in the best they possibly could, knowing they're going to come back, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to get excited about it, they're going to share stories. And that's the way that we treat our patrons here at BibleProject. Let's just care for the ones that are giving. We actually don't go ask. We actually don't go out and look for more patrons. We just go, let's have a hospitality team, not a development team. And I'm seeing more and more nonprofits actually do that. And it's very exciting because I've seen the kind of hockey stick growth that happens when you really care for those that are already massive ambassadors for your organization. They're the best people to go out and share with their friends. And as Krista said, it's true. Like if every single one of our patrons found one person to join them, your budget would double. That's just one other person. If everyone just found one, you'd double your budget. And yet we so often, try to find these silver bullets or these big whales. So
I love it. Jared, I want to turn to you. I feel like I've been watching you ride the nose of a bullet with LinkedIn engagement. The numbers are getting bigger, the amount of medical debt relieved. I mean, it's been super exciting to just watch and see this incredible thing that you're doing. What most excites you? Is it just more of the same? Or do you feel like philanthropy and fundraising as you've understood it is shifting or changing?
I feel like it's interesting because $4 really is funded through those larger gifts. Trying to pivot. We would love, and I think that the opportunity that I see is we've been really successful through social media. And I'll probably be repetitive on this panel, but like what I see as the biggest opportunity is a way to share impact with people. And I think Krista was talking about this, like they want to see impact and want to be communicated with in a certain way that is like, we've been able to say, hey, every single day, these are the amount of medical bills that we are relieving for people in your community. And that means something to them. So there's like that higher engagement of just being able to explain like exactly what we do to a large group of people that I think excites people. So it's been the same thing of, we're not out there asking, hey, we need more monthly signups, we need more people. It is just how much value can we bring to this community? And it seems like people respond to that.
Nate, I'm going to throw it to you, and then Krista would love to hear some of the observations or thoughts you have, especially given your deep knowledge of the research. But Nate, What most excites you? What opportunities do you see for OneHope in the future?
I guess I'd go like two directions with that, and kind of ramp off of some of what the panel's already shared. I was sharing with you guys right before we hopped on. I just came from an event yesterday that was largely with a community of folks who give in big ways, like major gift kind of folks. And to what Michael talked about in terms of the space, the idea of community and how energizing that is in fundraising, I've discovered that community is true whether you're talking about folks that give seven figures or whether you're talking about folks that give, $35 a month. And I think it looks different, right? It's maybe segmentation at its best when you can build, I love the way Michael used the concept of hospitality, and I visited some of Michael's restaurant, it's just, that is a true concept. And I think, what we tend to do in our space for Major Gift is more physical events, and we bring people together and they bond and create relationships and tend to find a community that they come together again every year. And that's one of the high points in their year where they come and they gather around generosity in big ways. And it's explosive. At the other end of the spectrum, the last 3 years, I've had the opportunity to build kind of influencer programs. And this will be our first year at OneHope in the organization I was at previously, getting to travel to other parts of the world with folks who hop on Instagram and in 24 hours can raise, $100,000 simply by, bringing their folks with them to other places in the world and almost vicariously giving them a sense of what's happening there and letting them kind of immerse themselves in that and then calling them to action and in ways that just blew me away. So not to dump too far into it, but I think I see community in both of those aspects. I think the folks that resonate, thousands and thousands of gifts that come through in 24 hours and almost, 2/3 of them have little comments on the Venmo gifts or the other transactions that are just like, hey, I'm giving because so-and-so told me to give. Like, don't know anything about the organization, but so-and-so just said, hopped on, told me what's going on. It's time to give. We're giving, and it just blew me away the first time that happened. And so I'm excited about that. I think there's an avenue to the future. It looks different than some of what we've done before, but I think for similar reasons to the Major Gift community, I think people like to gang up and have impact together and to know that they're doing it together and see that. So those are the two I'd point out that excite me the most about what's coming.
Yeah, Nate, there's a good follow for anybody, and you probably already know, but for those that are listening, Carlos Whitaker, a good friend out of Nashville, is just one of those guys that has over years built trust with his followers and now just finds places to obviously, places of need. And they're following him. They're along for the journey with him. They don't know the organizations he's giving to. They don't know the individual. They don't have any relationship. But he's so good at the follow-up around the impact that made. It's not just the ask. Like, he goes back and ends up sharing those stories. And people really do feel like they're, a part of that community in that space. So,
Krista, any observations, closing thoughts before I change the topic?
I just love so much of what all of our panelists are talking about. I think community is this buzzword in nonprofits right now, but it is so true. We see this every day, not only for the nonprofits on the Classy platform, but across our entire ecosystem. At GoFundMe, we have 190 million people in our community, all looking to turn their, collective grief, collective empowerment into action. And just as you all were talking, I was thinking of a recent example of how community showed up. Obviously, we're recording this soon after the LA wildfires, and we actually raised $250 million across our platforms, a quarter of that for nonprofits. And what we really saw there is no matter if you were from LA, had an affinity to LA, had some sort of connection to LA, everyone wanted to show up in community around that cause. And it was just so special to see because you were giving yes in response to a disaster that you saw unfold on your television, but you were giving, more importantly, to feel like you are part of something and part of that collective $250 million that was raised. So I just think that underscores everything the panelists were talking about as well.
I want to move us into that word community and talk a little bit about not hospitality, although it's an element of this, but community cultivation. It seems like all three of you have touched on and are doing some form of community cultivation where we want people to feel the impact and to be emotionally connected because we know that sustains their engagement. Here's the question, and you can answer this however you want to. Do you anticipate the way you cultivate community to be, would you hope it to be different in 12 to 18 months from now? Or do you feel like you're doing it well and you just want your existing strategies to continue to yield fruit and work? I'm going to start with you, Michael.
Oh, gosh. Well, I would say I hope it changes only because the world continues to change. So I don't want to be like closed off to, not being open to grow in certain areas. I do think what we're doing for us is working. There's always more we could do, but yeah, I would keep stewarding what we have, but also being willing to adjust. Now, everyone on this panel knows, the community aspect of the nonprofit is not new. The one that I think of even from 20-something years ago was Invisible Children. They raised more money than any nonprofit at that point in like 2 years through this communal experience. And it was young people. It wasn't even like millions of dollars coming in it was all young people that were doing wild things to be a part of this, And so I think there's things we've learned from that. It's different now with social. That was pre a lot of social media stuff. And so now it gets a lot different with social. I think what Krista and Jared and Nate's all been saying, I don't know if I would do a lot different, although I want to be open to what that looks like. One of our pillars at BibleProject, and it's not about BibleProject, but is that even the Bible is one of the 7 pillars is that it's communal literature. That's like one of the most important things actually about the way that we read the Bible. And yet in our individualistic kind of Western thought, we've gotten used to this being like not that. We've noticed when we bring communities back into the communal idea of actually reading the Bible, it explodes. And so it's no different to me when it comes to the generosity and our patrons. Like I'm actually out in New York next week and I sent out an email to 12 of our patrons kind of in this little Manhattan area where we're going to be and just said, hey, if you guys want to do lunch, come have lunch, come hang out. Most of that is just say thank you, but also for them to meet each other because there's something that happens when you meet others that are a part of the same mission and going like, I'm not alone in this giving. Like this is my neighbor who's also a part of this. How cool. And I'll tell you what, that's sticky. Those patrons will be patrons for a long time because they also now have each other that they're a part of in doing it. And so it's not why we do it, but it's definitely a byproduct of that part.
Jared, what about you? I keep seeing the engagement and the fans and the volume of engagement on LinkedIn at least growing. How's that being cultivated or stewarded at $4?
It's funny you mentioned LinkedIn. That I feel like I have the worst presence on LinkedIn than other platforms. Here's what I would like to do differently. I've noticed, at least with our community, that people want to be like in the journey with you, not just. So yes, we post the impact numbers. We post about, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the impact that we've had. I started a series called Never Start a Nonprofit, and I'm basically just going through the tough things about running a nonprofit, and I talk about donors, and I talk about mission drift, and I talk about all these different things, and it seems that people want that like behind the scenes look at what is happening because they are connected to what we're doing or they're connected to me. And I feel like that is something that I could do more. We've gotten a pretty good response to that, but I think when you're building this community, you do want to give them that kind of behind the scenes. And I think, Michael, just like even what you said, connecting with people in person, giving them a little bit more than what people expect, I feel goes a long way. So that would be something that I would want to do better and continue to change.
Nate?
Like I mentioned kind of up at the top, I'm still relatively new to OneHope. So, I think there's an aspect for me personally, like we were all talking about community. I'm still kind of learning the community of the organization I work at and loving the people. And there's an aspect to, like there's a shared culture between those of us that wear, OneHope shirts and those who really invest in the work that we're doing to make it possible for us to do that. And so I'm kind of learning that and in the middle of that, trying to figure out a sweet spot between bringing some of the experience that I have and the relationships with folks who may have platform and influencers like that, and really finding that sweet point that matches that sweet spot that matches the culture of IC or of OneHope and where we are, who we are, and where we're going. So I think for the future, I would love for us to get to be able to grow in this space of partnering better with. I use the term influencers, and I know Krista, you had talked about, and in the article, kind of a different terminology for that, which I love because as Michael mentioned, working with Carlos and others, like, I find it to be a little bit of a loaded term in working with folks. Like sometimes influencers don't like the term influencers, others do, they're fine. Like it's just vernacular or whatever. It's just, it shorthands what we mean. But I want to bring some of those relationships. This summer, we're going to go visit some OneHope projects and, take folks who have a platform, and we're going to meet kids and we're going to tell their stories and we're going to see what happens. And I think, I guess, that's what I want to, try to start small, but build relationships and community from there, and just be humble in the respect that, again, for me personally, coming in, I still have to learn the culture of the organization. I'm new to myself. So I don't know if that's a helpful answer, but I think culture transcends just your groups of people that are investing in you, but also the organization you're inside of,
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because Krista, in the report that GoFundMe created, you used the phrase impact creators. I think that's a much better phrase than influencer, which has just gotten so, I don't know, like you said, Nate, tired, a little bit vanity has crept into that. What does that mean to be an influencer? Everybody wants to be an influencer.
But I love anyone can be an impact creator. I think that's the thing. You don't have to be an influencer with millions of followers. You can be an impact creator in your own world, in your own community, in your own network.
So I want to explore that for a second, because there's this interesting intersection between community, the power of social platforms to create impact, to create people that do have influence without necessarily being influencers. Are the three of you seeing the peer-to-peer network and the influence that you get on social growing? Is that becoming an amazing channel to leverage? And is it working? Are you seeing this peer-to-peer network and the leverage and power of social media and the growth of people with influence and impact creators that may just be organic people that grow a following, and all of a sudden they've got 10,000 people following them? Is that something that you're leveraging more strategically? Is it paying dividends? Is it helping? Is it working? What's been your experience, and what are you hoping for over the coming future? Nate, let's start with you, since you're new. I mean, this seems like something you're familiar with. Do you see it as a core strategy to the future?
I do. And I think for us, there's a little bit of kind of tooling up for it. That may sound like a weird way of saying it, but it's particularly, I remember how I was talking about community at different segment levels. I think where I'm at right now, and us in OneHope, we have a history of working really well with a couple segments of folks that are really well vested and have long history with the organization. In the more, I think kind of where we're talking about the space of social influence and people that might give in peer-to-peer campaigns and things like that, that's something that's a little bit newer to us. And having relationships with like BibleProject, folks who really do YouVersion, right? Folks who really have a very, very large footprint of folks who are engaged in what they do. Like, that's where our learning comes from. And so just the point about tooling up, one of the things, the first time I worked, just Carlos, who Michael mentioned earlier, the first time I worked with him, one of the things he said in one of our first calls about influence and doing, a campaign, just telling people about what was going on and raising funds. He was like, Nate, if you're not set up to take gifts from Venmo, he's like, you're going to lose about 60% of the response that I can get when I talk to my people, because they want to give quick, and they want to be responsive. And, in the traditional nonprofits, you're looking at a tool like that and you're saying, wow, there's no business account, right? How do we even do this? My finance team's like, how do I receive people? Like, it It was a whole thing. And we had to figure out how to work our way through that. And because the tool is part of the community and it's part of the experience, right? It's not agnostic. It's not something separate from that. I couldn't just say, hey, we've got a peer-to-peer page that's set up. It'll take credit cards and just say, go do it, influencer, make it work. It was like, no, you got to meet folks where they're at. So in the new space at OneHope, that's what we're doing. We're working to tool up so that the tool meets the experience. And it's something that when we go to somebody, we partner with somebody who has a community already with them and they bring it in, that we've put a welcome mat out that makes it easy for somebody to walk through the door and take a first step into an experience with us. And I think when that meets the relationships with the right kind of folks whose tribe already really matches our own, then I think we really win. And that's what I'm excited to see come in the next couple of years, is that meeting point, if that makes sense.
Very much so. Jared, you seem to have growing followers across multi-channels, not just LinkedIn. What's your thinking on this opportunity to leverage people that have influence, whether they're influencers or just organic impact creators? They're force multipliers. Are you stewarding that, leveraging that? Is that a strategic part of your future?
Yeah, I think I do like this throwing out the influencer term and using the impact creators. I think that where we have seen a lot of potential value with that is we just started asking patients that we were able to help just to tell a little bit of their story, whether it be a Google review or a quick video or whatever. And none of these people are influencers, right? They're not, they might have a couple hundred followers or whatever, but when they go and tell their story, it's extremely powerful. And I feel like that has been something that has been kind of staring at me for a long time of like, oh, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. And not just to raise money, but even just to raise awareness for what we're doing. Like everybody knows somebody with a medical bill that they can't pay. So when you say, hey, I just got in contact with this nonprofit and my $5,000 medical bill went to zero, that alone creates potentially millions of dollars in additional medical debt relief. So I think that, it's something that I've been thinking about, and just as we continue to grow our online community, trying to implement that a little bit more.
Michael, this seems like something you're well-versed in. What does this look like for you over time?
Yeah, I mean, so two things. One, and again, not right or wrong, this is just what we do, and we're probably doing it wrong in so many ways. We are much more in a being pulled as opposed to pushing when it comes to our social side of things, meaning we're not going out and trying to actually get new people and new social. We're kind of going where people are at. And this kind of came down to a few things. One, I remember our largest download day of our app ever, which was, a year into us having an app. And we tracked it back to a gal on TikTok who had like 300 followers. And she just posted a little morning, this is me, and this is my favorite app for doing Bible study in the morning. And she just posted that. And then that just kind of pinged around in the TikTok machine until there was 250,000 downloads of our app that day. It was just crazy. Could we have strategized that? No. There's just no way that we could have. And we've tried it in other ways. We're like, okay, well, what if we get this person? We can put so much energy into it. Some of it we just got to we believe in what we're doing. We're doing what we're doing. We're putting it out there, and we're just going to kind of go where people are at and follow that along. So that's one. The second thing that we found very helpful with our social kind of community is they're our biggest defenders. Meaning now, Jared, Jared takes care of medical bills and heals people. There's nobody that's going Jared, you're a jerk. I can't believe what you're doing is what you're doing. BibleProject it's the Bible. It's actually controversial. And so there are times where inside, the YouTube, it'll be I can't believe they're saying this. And what's wild is we don't respond to that. The crowd does. Our community, the millions of people on YouTube, come to the defense of BibleProject, which is actually really important for us because we're not then in this constant defend, conversation and trying to get ahead of it. We just put it out there, and the crowd is our amazing community army that kind of goes along. So I would say those are the two ways that I would say we believe it's super important. The social components, YouTube, Instagram, these different communities are so important, but we're still more in like a care for them versus a like go out and get more. And they grow.
Before we leave this topic, and Krista, I want to hear some closing thoughts from you because I want to move us into a different arena that is a passion of mine. But Jared, tell the TikTok story that is so core to your brand, to the beginning of $4.
Yeah. So $4 originally was $4 Portland. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. It was a crowdfunding platform to help people pay medical bills. So I was paying medical bills for people every month, pool money together, very grassroots fundraising. And I started helping patients fill out their applications for financial assistance. And in a few months, I got like $1 million of medical debt to disappear for people. And so I was like, okay, I'm an idiot. I need to stop crowdfunding and paying these bills because every family that I was paying these bills for were eligible for financial assistance. And I just didn't know about these programs. So it really frustrated me. And so I started, trying to get the word out. And at the beginning of 2021, my little sister said, hey, you should get on TikTok. I think that this would do well on there. And I am not like great with social media, or at least maybe I wasn't at the time. And I made a 60-second video, told people what charity care was. And I told them, hey, if you need help with this, you can shoot me a direct message and we'll try to help. And the video ended up getting like 30 million views. And it was just the DMs were too much for me. So that was kind of like how we got here was through TikTok. I mean, it is crazy to say like that TikTok video has resulted in over $75 million of medical debt, like directly and indirectly, right?
And you couldn't have strategized that. That wasn't
exactly
like the strategy for like, you know what I'm going to do is go onto TikTok.
Krista, it's interesting because I'm hearing this theme, which we've all known, right? There's no, I'm going to make a thing go viral. You can't make it go viral. Those are just opposing ideas. At the same time, you can cultivate the soil. And by cultivating the soil, it perhaps allows for more things to sprout up or pop up. And your report demonstrates that there is a need to be more stewarding or cultivating of this social soil. Talk about that in some themes and trends in the data, and then I want to move us into a new topic.
Yes. So you're exactly right. I think what I hear the through line from, Michael's example, Jared's your example, is you need to be authentic and you need to meet people where you are. Nate, you said that. And I think that's what has been really interesting in the data is we know people want to engage. We know people want to share. The data is telling us it's not just young people that want to share. It's millennials, it's Gen X, they want to share. And how are we tooling these individuals, to your point, Nate, to do this more easily? There's, people that will always want to fundraise for you in a very prescriptive peer-to-peer way. They are amazing. They will set up a fundraiser. They will read your toolkit. They will do that. And there is a good majority of people who will never do that for you, but care a lot about your organization and really want to support you. It's been interesting to see some of the tooling and the technology we've launched through GoFundMe. We've recently launched impact links, which are just a simple share link that people could share out. So not a traditional peer-to-peer. It's you can share a cause that you care about, share a campaign that you care about out to your networks, and you're actually able to see the impact of that share directly. And so a recent example is that we had a GoFundMe user. She donated $5 to a campaign. She shared her impact link and it generated $100,000 through 4,000 donations. And she was able to see that impact. She was able to cultivate her community. She was able to meet people where they are. And it had, I can't do the math, but like an incredible impact for that cause just through the sharing. And so, how are you meeting people where you are? How are you telling that story really authentically through people who are your raving fans? And then what are the tools you're using to help you see the impact and get the story out there?
I want to close our time together by moving into a topic that for me is one of unique passion. And I think it's unavoidable given this topic of social media younger generations, modern philanthropy, and that is the topic of, no surprise, brand. So I find brand to be an unbelievably important topic, and it's only growing in importance. And we continue to work with nonprofits that have significant brand gaps. And as they begin to awaken to some of these trends and realities of younger generations and modern philanthropy, those brand gaps become even more exposed. Huge opportunities for lifestyle brands, for creating swag, for partnering with cities and doing things differently. What does the brand future for each of you look like? Do you see trends where your brand needs to show up differently, needs to take risks, needs to pursue new avenues, needs to have its own version of Lululemon's The Sweat Life? Are you already doing those things? Or do you feel like your brand is solid and ready and able to scale into these trends that younger generations are responding to? I'm going to start, Nate, with you, since you're new and you have outside eyes on the organization you work with.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think, I guess I probably look at it from a couple of different lenses. But since we've been talking about, like impact creators, influencers, I think that is one of the questions that I ask myself at the kind of the front end of trying to build out a new set of relationships in a new organization is, where does our brand, God's Word Every Child, OneHope, meet up with kind of the brands of the folks who are going to talk about us in the spaces where we want to go. And a lot of that is the relationships up front with folks that, we just started a conversation. Michael and I were at an event this last, fall in Atlanta with a bunch of folks who have wildly divergent, but all of them have influence in their space. And they in those conversations, starting to discover, man, who follows you? Like, what's your tribe look like? And where do we find points that align? But understanding that in the future, when we go and we tell stories about the work that OneHope's doing, but you're telling them to your people, then there is emerging a little bit of brands, right? And I think that's part of the space that we were talking about at the beginning, that people that follow and respond to somebody online because, on Instagram or wherever, they trust them, that trust factor may be greater for the person they're looking at. They're just, they're starting to bridge that over to you. So there is, in the traditional sense, that there's always the risk, right? That you may partner with somebody who helps to promote your brand, and something may happen with them in the next couple of years, and it's like positive or negative, and it could really have an impact on your brand. And then it's like, well, what do we do about, But I feel like, honestly, that's somewhat unavoidable in our world today because people do follow people, and there's a sense of that. So it's a bit of a messy answer to it, but it's saying it's really doing the hard work up front in our space of looking when we're having conversations, with folks who love what we do, and we're trying to just dream about, hey, what might that look like to share that with the people who follow you? Thinking through, okay, the next couple of years, we want to build long relationships, right? We're not looking to, hey, let's just do a pop-up campaign next year, one and done, never see this person again, but like develop longer term relationships. And so how do we look 4 or 5 years down the road and say, does God's Word Every Child really line up well with your community? Because if it doesn't, and you're just trying to pull your people over to a cause that's adjacent but not really aligned, it's just not going to work well in the long term. And so it's a hard thing to figure out, honestly, at first. And I feel like we're just going to gain experience as we work with folks and kind of hold it open-handedly. But one last little piece. I have found, and the joy for us, we work all over the world. I have found getting on a plane with somebody and spending a week with them in the third world is a great way to learn who they are and to get to, because the people that follow them, they love them as a person. Like to Michael's point about Carlos, and I hate to keep using Carlos as an example, but when I spent a week with Carlos in Rwanda, I understood why people followed him and what the ethos was. And that's so much of a greater space to say, yeah, that really lines up with what we do, God's Word Every Child, right? And so it's a privilege we have because we work all over the world, and that tends to be the way we line up when we work with folks who are, impact creators, and we can take them overseas. But so long answer to say, finding alignment between the brand of the person that's going to be talking about you and your brand, and getting really good at being able to kind of discern that up front before you even do a campaign.
I love that perspective on the intersection of impact creators and influencers that you double down on in your own brand, and ensuring that there's authentic points of connection. Jared, you and I have had many a conversation about me trying to push you into developing a lifestyle brand for $4 because I see this unbelievable way that relieving medical debt could become this peer-to-peer network with incredible clothing and bumper stickers and all sorts of things, right? This guerrilla marketing $4 campaign. Are you ready to bite the hook? What are your thoughts on the future of your brand and opportunities like that?
Oh man, I know. I was going to say, I know that we've talked about this a few times. I would say yes. I think we're getting to. There's a couple things that $4 is dealing with. One, we have to gain the trust of the patient because we're asking the patient for quite a bit of information. Like if you want to apply for hospital financial assistance, we need your pay stubs. We need your, we need your proof of income, there's a lot of trust there. Once we're able to help them, obviously they're pumped. And what we would like to do, $4 can't really be the nation's, hospital financial assistance customer service line. We're not going to be able to solve the problem that way. And what we're trying to do, and I think where a big opportunity is to kind of build that community of champions for not just telling people about hospital financial assistance and whatnot, but to champion policy change. And I think that that's something that we are moving into in the next few years. So I think that I've got a handful of things that I'm trying to figure out. And if I were to bring up merch right now, my team might kill me. So it's coming though, Ted. You'll get the first hat. That's for sure.
I'm just teasing you, bro. I think you have such an amazing opportunity to build that community through that type of campaign.
I agree 100%. It's definitely something I think about.
Michael, BibleProject seems like it already has in many ways a SaaS type relationship with its community. What does it look like for your brand to evolve and grow and take risks and innovate over time?
Man, that's a good question. I'll caveat this with just saying, our name isn't, BibleProject is the name on purpose. It's actually a project. It could close in 3 years. Like we don't have this legacy thing that's like, we're going to hand this off to our kids and that we want this nonprofit to just live on forever. And some need to do that. I hope that OneHope does. I hope that organizations have that kind of thing. For us, we've just felt convicted from the very beginning that it was an Avengers Unite for a time to kind of do this thing. And then this is not the last job we're ever going to have, So we also aren't thinking about brand with that kind of mission or longevity. We're more thinking about it as this is our time. We're a part of the wave. We're not creating the wave. There is a whole bunch of people that are doing really rad things about helping people read the Bible. We're just a part of that. And there might be a time where the audience doesn't want us anymore and need us, and we'll all be okay being like, here you go. It lives on. So project is important for us on our brand just for that. The second thing, and I think Nate brought it up, but we don't have partners on purpose. We have zero partners. We collaborate with people, but for our brand, one of the important things is that we do not partner with anybody so that we can work with everybody. And it feels like we're really bad partners because we don't partner with anybody, but we also just want to be super open-handed, almost open source to the point where it's just we're mission-driven, not brand-driven or not financial driven, or it's very mission driven, which is we want to help people read the Bible, experience the Bible as a unified story, at least to Jesus. And that keeps us pretty guarded with our brand. We say no to 99% of the things. We say yes to 1% of the things, which is making explainer videos and recording a weekly podcast and some classroom content to help people read the Bible. And that's it. And we're not adding anything. In the next 10 years, we're not adding anything. When people ask us what's the next big thing at BibleProject? It's we're going to make some videos. We're going to record some podcasts. We're going to make some free classroom stuff and give away for free. But that is our brand, and that's what's trusted. People know that we aren't going to go off on some unique tangent. They know that we're never going to ask them for anything. We've never had an ask. We don't do an ask, and they know that, and they trust that, and that's part of our brand. There's nothing on the other side of the equal sign, for us. And so I would say those would be the brand distinctives that we protect really carefully, and we're really okay saying no, I guess. I don't know.
I love that each of you had such a different answer and perspective on brand and the role of brand in the future. So it's so great. We're coming up on time. I want to respect our time. I'm going to ask each of you, Krista, yourself included, to give a short answer to this question. There are lots of people listening that were like you were when you started. They were young in the game, starting a nonprofit. It's their first time being a chief advancement officer or chief development officer. If you could say something to your younger self when you were first getting in this game, what would you want to say to the Jared of 7 years ago or whenever it was you were starting, or the Michael of however long ago it was when you got into this game, or the Nate of the Krista? If you could say something to the version of you that was just getting in this game that we're in, what would you say that would be encouraging? Unless you really wanted to be discouraging to yourself, but why would you?
I'll throw it out just because easy. I feel like I've answered this question before. I would tell myself, like, don't focus on growth. Focus on the mission. Let growth happen out of the mission. If you're aiming at growth, you're going to miss mission. If you're aiming at mission and it's the right mission, it will grow. If it doesn't grow, then it's not a good mission. It's not a good thing to focus on. Like, Jared's thing grew because it was an awesome thing to focus on. It was an amazing mission. And if he was focused on the growth strategy, I think he would have missed the actual thing that he was there to do. And so often as CEOs or as, brand strategists or whatever, you start to grow and then all of a sudden all your time starts to be about growth strategy as opposed to the reason you got into this thing in the first place, which was the mission. And so that's what I would tell myself.
What a great answer. Well done. Who else wants to go?
Well, I don't know how you follow that, but I think, I would say to anyone early in their career or to the nonprofits listening, make the ask. Nonprofits a lot of times need to have everything perfectly buttoned up, need to have the messaging perfect in order to go out and make the ask. Like, just make the ask. People want to support you, whether that's asking people to share on your behalf, advocate on your behalf, give $1, or just making the ask of your colleagues, your coworkers on how you need help and support. We see it every day on GoFundMe that people want to help each other. And so make the ask.
That's awesome.
I'll throw something in here. I had a mentor tell me way, way early days, like, hey, it feels like you're digging through rocks right now. But the ground does get softer. And I don't think I really believed him at the time. But it really has. I remember like the first time trying to raise $5,000, that felt like $500,000 today. It just felt like, oh my gosh, this is the hardest thing in the world. And I think the idea that, and I think what, when I ditto what Michael said as well, like, and go back to what I said earlier, is like, just focus on providing value to people. That is, you can't go wrong with that.
So good. All right, Nate, what's your answer, buddy?
Mine's kind of personal. It's also where I'm at. Like, I would tell my younger self or younger people coming in, man, like, and I say this about hiring folks onto my team and folks I look for, like, the number one characteristic I look for anymore, this wasn't the way I was when I first started, is adaptability. Much more than a hard skill set. When I came into this world and I was doing communication stuff and then branding stuff, it was like, I was all about, man, I got to get this other skill. I got to learn this other thing. I got to perfect this technology. And, I'd wake up a year later and that technology was obsolete. Nobody was using any. And I just think that is a truism. And as I've grown, by God's grace, the people that I've found the all-stars on my team have generally been the people that have had the most adaptability. Like, it's almost genetically in them that they find ways to move when we move. And that has to be true of me if my team's going to be that way as well. And so, to the comments we've all been making about changing, like, if we want to build community with people today, tomorrow, into the future, our team's got to be willing to do that as well. And we've got to, not just willing to do it, we've got to embrace it. And I think finding myself with that and people to be on my team that are just, they're adaptable. And we are able to get, we own the mission. We're core to God's word, every child, but like how we get there, we are just willing to adapt. And so anyway, I have to tell that to myself. I'm 6 months into my, this role here. I'm still learning to adapt myself, but also like, hey, preach it to my team. And when we bring in new people, that's the number one characteristic. Can we adapt? Because what we're doing today is going to be different 6 months from now.
This has been really, 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 really good. I'm just reminded of how talented and how insightful and how stimulating it is to talk to all four of you because of your expertise, your passion. It shows up in this amazing discussion today. So thank you for doing this. I have a feeling this will become 2 episodes because there's just so much amazing content here. So thank you for doing this. Krista, thank you for the work of Classy from GoFundMe and for how it helps fuel all the work that we're trying to do in the world for good. Jared, Michael, Nate, Krista, it's been an honor. Thank you for doing this. And hopefully I'll see you soon. And Michael, the Restaurant Podcast.
I'm down.
We've got to get it going.
Thank you, Ted.